What if I told you that the coldest notable major city in the world is not Fargo, North Dakota? It's not Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's not a Canadian city such as Edmonton or Calgary. It is not Moscow. Although if you're looking at Moscow, you are in the right country. The coldest major city or regional city in the world is in Russia. But you got to go all the way to the far east to find it. It's also the name of one of the countries on the board game Risk. You see this area on the eastern side of Russia, this territory called Yakutsk. Yakutsk is actually a city. The territory that is on the Risk board labeled as Yakutsk is basically what is called the Sakha Republic, S-A-K-H-A. Yakutsk is the capital of the Sakha Republic, so geographically it fits. And so, why is this place so cold, and how cold is it? Well, the coldest temperature ever recorded in Yakutsk is minus 84 degrees Fahrenheit. The average temperature in January, if you include all the temperatures and average them all out, is minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So in January, and actually February is slightly colder, minus 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And so the question always comes down to, why do people live in a place so darn cold? The answer is, it's going to always be the same question that you always have to answer on those types of things, and pretty much anything in the world these days. That's follow the money. The Sakha Republic has a lot of very, very uncommon natural resources, diamonds, rare earth minerals, and of course oil. The result of this is that Yakutsk is the only urban center in Russia that's actually gaining in population as people move for the money. The Sakha Republic in 2010, Yakutsk back in 2010 had a population of about 275,000. In 2020, this had grown to around 325,000. So a large number of people are moving to Yakutsk and the Sakha Republic. And the Sakha Republic as a whole is about 1 million square miles and has a population of around 1 million residents as a whole, or one person per square mile, which is actually a lower population density than the U.S. state of Alaska, speaking of Arctic cold. So yes, the coldest regional center in the world is Yakutsk. Yakutsk is also one of the northernmost river ports in the world. It is on the Lena River, and Yakutsk is a river port. However, the river port doesn't do very much good between the months of, say, November and June, or even May, because the river, of course, is frozen over. There is no bridge over the Lena River to access Yakutsk. However, during those winter months, of course, it is possible to drive over an ice road. An ice road is usually designated for that purpose. The only road into the Yakutsk Okrug, which is basically like the Yakutsk County, is on the east side of the Lena River. And so vehicular traffic does cross this ice road in the wintertime to provide supplies and other goods to the city. The other notable fact about Yakutsk is it is one of the only notable urban centers in the world entirely built on permafrost. Permafrost is frozen ground that remains frozen on a year-round and nearly permanent basis, hence the term permafrost. Most of the buildings in Yakutsk, because of the freeze-thaw cycles that are involved with the upper levels of permafrost, buildings cannot be built on a traditional foundation because the push and the force of the freezing and thawing of permafrost would crack the foundations every single year. And so most buildings in Yakutsk are built with pile-driven poles that are punched through the permafrost and are situated on bedrock below. So that gives these buildings a firm foundation by virtue of having their support mechanisms drilled through the permafrost and onto the bedrock below. Now, I mentioned Fargo at the start of this video. It's actually a very similar building format there, although Fargo is not on permafrost. The reason why Fargo is built with these types of beams or poles punched through the bedrock, it doesn't go through permafrost. In the case of Fargo, it's because the soil of the Red River Valley is almost entirely made of clay, and that's a soft foundation, and buildings can also sink. They can sink in eastern North Dakota, but in Yakutsk, it's a matter of whether the foundation will crack entirely or not from the pushing and pulling and the freezing and thawing of that permafrost. Now, Yakutsk is the coldest notable urban center in the world. The coldest town in all of the world as a whole is a smaller town located a couple hundred miles north of Yakutsk called Oymyakon. Oymyakon has recorded temperatures very close to minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and their average temperatures in the wintertime do go below minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is also minus 40 degrees Celsius. The scales meet at minus 40. And so Oymyakon is the coldest town in the world. But Yakutsk is the coldest urban center. The interesting thing about Yakutsk, though, is that the summers are actually relatively mild. So the winters are enough to push the average annual temperature below 0 Fahrenheit, but the summertime temperatures can be on the warm side or even borderline hot. The average high temperature in Yakutsk in July is 78 degrees Fahrenheit. The record high temperature in Yakutsk is 101 degrees Fahrenheit. You compare that to the minus 83, and you have an annual extreme swing of 184 degrees from hottest to coldest. This is all because of the same reason. Yakutsk is located over 1,000 kilometers from any ocean port, and there's no moderating influences of any kind within the central part of the Sakha Republic. The only part of the Sakha Republic with any moderating climate is the extreme far north, which does border the Arctic Ocean. And so Yakutsk in the summertime, because of its inland location, can be astoundingly warm, especially for its latitude, which is 62 degrees north, or a couple hundred miles south of the Arctic Circle. So there it is, folks. The coldest urban regional population center in the world. I wouldn't even call it a major city because a population of 325,000 doesn't really count as a major city pretty much in anybody's book. But the coldest regional center is Yakutsk, Russia. Check it out on a Risk board sometime if you ever play the board game Risk. Yakutsk is that territory on the far eastern end of Russia, which is basically identical in terms of geography and borders with the Sakha Republic. So there it is, guys. Yakutsk, the coldest urban center on the planet. This was a fun one. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy your hump day. I hope you did. And as usual, peace out, homies.